clients send the server requests, and the server knows who the client is. So up until now, we've received requests on the server, and we have no idea who's sending us those requests. Like literally no idea, right? And then authorization. The server not only knows who is sending the request, but if they will be allowed to perform, I don't know, what they want to do, the request. So, if a user is just trying to create a new post, right? And I just want something that says their name. That's kind of like authentication, because I'm just recording their name. Authorization would be, well, so a user is trying to delete a post. Are they the ones who created it? So I not only know who they are, but now I have to decide, are they allowed to do that thing? So I might totally know who a user is. They're logged in, but I deny them from a specific request because they're not authorized. So that's the distinction between these two. So let's remind ourselves about the chaos of spammer, right? So which of these did we have in spammer, David?
I'm not sure right offhand.
Yeah, it's kind of mean. Start off with a trick question, right? Neither. We didn't know. We didn't know who they were, and we didn't make decisions about what they were allowed to do. So literally, anyone can do anything, like a million times, delete someone else's message, edit. Right? It was the Wild West. I don't think. Can anyone think of a single app that is like this? I can't. But it's not. It's not a rhetorical question. I literally can't think of an app that's like this. Like totally just anonymous, free for all. I don't.
Sam, Max, sorry. Did you ever see like Reddit Place where like loads of people could? I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but it's like a website where everyone can just write whatever It's like a yearly thing. They think. Like, maybe you have to be logged in though. I don't know if that doesn't count.
Yeah, if you're logged in, it kind of doesn't count. I mean, I'm sure it exists.
Be logged in.
Even 4chan, you have to log in for, right? Do we have any 4chan users? I don't know. I'm sure it exists, but there's no like mainstream site, which is kind of bizarre to think about. There's no mainstream site that doesn't have a lot of both of these topics. So our very important final topic, so that we can build full stack applications. And let's remind ourselves what we were working on. Or I guess let's close the loop here. So how does this process work? We have our front end and we have our back end, right? Does anyone have intuition about how this process works at the highest level? What does the client do? What does the server do as in regards to authentication? Okay, it's kind of a poor way to frame the question, but does anyone have any intuition about this process? Yeah, Daniel.
Is it like a database of users with IDs that it's going to compare with in the backend?
Yeah, I wasn't even going to list the database, but the database certainly is here, and it's going to have usernames and passwords stored. Yeah. So the database is here doing that, right? So I guess what starts this party off is a request from the client to the server. This is going to be a post request to /user/register to go ahead and register a new user, right? And does anyone, when the server receives this request, does anyone know what the server responds with? So users asking to register, they send a username and password, and assuming there's no errors. What's actually a possible error in this situation? What's a bad client? What would make this a bad request? Victor?
Wrong username or
What was that, Har?
I was gonna say wrong username or password.
Well, there's no wrong. I mean, I guess you could violate, like, you didn't use all the minimum requirements, but there's no wrong username if it's a new user. But what could be the problem if, and we've all seen this before.
Identical usernames?
Yeah, like you are trying to register, but you've already registered. You just forgot or whatever. Assuming it's not one of those situations, what does the server respond to the client with? What does the server always respond to our clients with?
Confirmation of the request.
Yeah, but what data type do they always respond with as far as our servers? Nothing's going to change there.
HTTP?
Yeah, that is the language they talk in, but what's the body? What kind of servers are, what's the meat of what we send back? Always.
JSON.
Some JSON, yeah. And what's the property that I like to use? Always.
Success, true.
Yeah. And then the main meat of what they're going to send back for this particular request is token. And this will be a long, crazy string. And this is going to be called a JWT token. We'll explore way more of these and create them on the back end. But for right now, you can think of it as like the metaphor everyone uses. When you check into a hotel, you give your name and your license, and that's like you presenting your username and password. But then you get the card that you can just use on your door, and that's like your token. So now, let me delete this part because it's just getting in the way, I think. So now, the client receives the token, and then the question is, are they now like registered? Or what does it mean for a client to be signed in on the front end? So I'm going to say the requirements for this, and this might not make so much sense now, but as you're building these applications, this is what I want you to think about. Token is stored in state. So you have a piece of new state you're going to create called token, where you store the token you get from the server, your key card. Token is stored in local storage. Anyone remember what local storage is from that video I made you watch or your life?
Is it storage in the browser?
Yeah, so we have a little hard drive in each client's browser that we can permanently store stuff. So we're going to use that for the very first time. We've never been able to do that before. It's every time they close their browser, it just disappears everything, right? I mean, I'm using the word permanently. It's not super permanent because the user can always just delete it or do whatever they want. Third step is user info stored in state. So not only the token, but the user name and the ID is stored in state as well. I consider those, when you have those three things, all of them, that's when your user is logged in on the front end. It's going to be a complete different conversation on the back end, but we're going to start this process at the front end. So the idea here, our objective kind of, is to make a front end application that can send a request to the server to prove who they are. so that we can avoid the chaos of spammer, right? So after they do all this work of registering, and login is going to be very similar. Now, does anyone know? It might be really hard to know without. Does anyone know what they do with the token now that they have it? On every request they make subsequent to that process, what do they do with that token?
Do they send it back?
Yeah, so on every, well, there's one more. Actually, at this state, let me backtrack just a second. So at this state in the process, they're not actually signed in according to our rules. They got the token back. Presumably they stored that in state in local storage, but which of these don't they have? Which of these requirements? We're not a...
Maybe the info because they're not logged in.
Yeah, they don't. Well, being logged in is these three things, and they don't have the user info. They just have this token. They don't have like their own name or ID. So the next step in this, they send a GET request to /user/token. And now instead of their username and password, does anyone know what they send?
The token, the JWT token.
Yes, correct. But they send it in a weird, they don't send it in the body, which is confusing. They send it somewhere else. Does anyone know where? So they send it in the headers, which we haven't explored yet, but is another area you can put information in a request. Oh, we have explored. We put headers, content type, application JSON, remember? But now there's going to be a new field in headers called authorization. And here they're going to put the word bearer and then that long, crazy string. Yeah. So this is going to be how they send the token, not in the body, but in this headers authorization. And now when the server gets this request, any guess what they send back? What do we always send back? First off, Gyong, what property do I always want you to send back?
The JSON with success. True.
Yeah. And then any guess here what they're going to send back? So our whole goal is to get the user info. We sent the token. So what would we get back here?
I think they will send back like username.
Yeah, so we'll get user, and in there will be like username, ID. What do you think? Would we send back password or not? What's your intuition there? Should the server send back a password? No. You guys are shaking your head, right? There's no reason the client needs their own password. That'd just be bad security. So we don't send that back. So now they receive this and the client can store this in their React state. And now they are officially logged in. And the cool part is once they are logged in after all that work, do I still have paste? Yeah. So after all that work, they can do something like make a new post, do a post request to posts, and they'll have to send all the normal things you would, like whatever a post includes. But what also will they send, do you think? If they're trying to make a new post, how do they prove to the server who they are?
With the token?
Yeah, and where do we put that, the token? In a request from the client to the server.
A header.
Yeah. So headers, and then authorization, and then that bearer blah 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 thing. Yep. Can I move this up? It's a little ugly, but So any questions on that? And then this is, as far as the front end's concerned, this is really the end of the story. So we now on every request can prove who we are to the server. What types of things can you imagine for our big Reddit project are we going to have to prove to the server? Which kinds of requests? Can you think of some? Monica, can you think of one example of a request your Reddit client will have to make to the server where it has to prove who they are?
Would it be like updating a message maybe?
Well, there's no messages in Reddit, right? We have, what do we call them?
Replies?
We have posts, they're called usually. But I guess you could call them replies. But yeah. So editing one of those, deleting one of those, yeah, for sure. What's a request type a user doesn't have to make or prove who they are for? Because this isn't an all the time thing. This is just sometimes we have to prove to the server who we are. Jazz, what's an example of a request you don't think they would have to prove who they are to client to server? Posting, they probably would, because we want to know who they are, who's the author of the post. Yeah.
Okay. What if it's like anonymous?
Well, then we're not doing authentication.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any guesses? It is a little tricky.
Is it liking a comment?
No, we still want to know who likes, and we want to make sure they don't like more than once on Reddit.
Would it be just
get
post?
What do you mean by just post? Monica.
I was saying just like looking through posts. Like,
There you go. So just getting the posts, a request to get posts. So you can almost go on any website, even Twitter, Reddit, any of them. You don't have to be signed in, and you can see posts. But as soon as you want to do anything interactive, they make you log in. So same here. Any questions on that flow of authentication, authorization? There's a lot, but this is our last big topic.
So it's the same kind of syntax like for put or delete request as well.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
You'd still pronounce. You just have to provide the token in the header for those requests.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's refresh our minds then on Resume Meet. What did we do yesterday? I see some links up here. So what is Resume Meet again? We want you guys to be able to post descriptions of the different projects we've created so we can all crowdsource and help us build our resumes. We're going to be able to like different posts. We're going to be able to submit posts. I don't know about edit. I don't know about delete. Maybe not. We'll see how we do. Why do I want user authentication for this project? Any guesses? I mean, besides because we want to learn it.
When you click login.
Well, that's that's like the mechanism, but not the why. Like, why is for this project do we want authentication in general?
So you can link multiple posts to one user?
Yeah, I guess, or more generally, so I can know who did these posts. Because eventually, I'm gonna have an assignment where you have to contribute a post, unless you're like objecting to this project. Because I don't know, you feel uncomfortable with other people using your words, which you can reach out to me about. That's valid. Besides for that, I have no way of knowing if you actually submitted a post unless it says like author, like Renata, right, on this post. So yeah, so I want authentication for that reason. And then I want you guys to only be able to like something once. I don't want you to be able to, maybe I don't want you to be able to like your own post, right, on this particular project. I probably will let you, but that's just an example. So that's why we need authentication on here. But before we even think about that, I know React Router syntax was kind of gross yesterday. So let's just review that. I see these links here: resume, meet, projects, login, register. When I click on projects, how's the path going to change? And what components are going to be visible versus which are going to be hidden? Let's pick on Ryan since he wasn't here yesterday, right? Let's see if he watched lecture yesterday. Ryan, what's going to happen when I click on projects to the path?
The path will change to /projects.
And which of these components will be visible?
All of them?
Nope, not all of them.
Mm.
Let's go one by one. So we see / the path for app, and we have /projects. Is app gonna show up? Is component app gonna be rendered? Yeah, you would think no, right? It's actually, I guess this one is fuzzy matching, is what we would call it.
It's kind of a difficult
yeah.
Max.
So app will show up. So if the path is /projects, this won't show up. This won't show up. This will show up. And then the kind of tricky one is this one. What do you think, Victor? Will this show up, this component, if we have /projects as our path?
No, I don't think it will show up.
It won't. Yeah. So we only have projects and app for projects. And then I click on one of our projects. This is what those links look like to refresh your memory. So how's the path going to change when I click on one of these, and which components are going to be visible and which aren't? Renata.
So it'll have a / and it'll have the number in the parameter.
Give me the full path. Give me the full path.
Okay, so the full path is projects and then / the number.
Very
the ID
nice.
number.
Very nice. And then which components out of all these will show up?
So just the projects, or I think just the project one. So
what about
login and registers? No. Yes, it will, because it's global.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. This is fuzzy matching, and then the children are exact matching, which is kind of confusing. But that's the way it is. So app is showing up because nothing. Well, our navbar wouldn't actually even be showing up if app wasn't showing up. So we know app is showing up, and then we know this component is showing up. So that's kind of the basics of a React router, and that has nothing to do with authentication. Totally separate topic. Questions on React router? Okay, so now we want to build out this register. We want to start with authentication. We want to do this first step where the client sends their username and password to a server. The server, by the way, I've already built, so we don't have to worry or think about that. And I have the docs here, which may be helpful. So we have to send a request to this API, and we have to hit this route. And this is what it's going to look like. And this is the response. So how do we get a username and password from a user? How does it?
You could put it in a form.
Yeah.
Maybe?
So our option there is a form. I'm going to do 2 inputs. Username and password and a button to say register. But now we have a lot of, not a lot, but some annoying work to do because we want these to be a controlled input components. So how do we make these blessed by React? Guion?
Sorry, I don't.
There's a few things we need to do to make these a controlled input elements or forms.
Sorry, right now my head is blank.
Yeah,
so-
You're good. You're good. Monica, any guesses or ideas? A couple of different things, so we can do a few things.
Would it be maybe like linking?
Linking what?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a second since we did front end. Does anyone remember? Yeah, Renata?
I think, so you're talking about the use state? So
Yeah,
first
we are going to
have
need
the
use state.
Okay.
What are we creating state for?
So we are creating state for the form submit and as well as for the input.
Just the input, actually. The inputs.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah,
okay.
so what
so
would
just
be
for
some
the
good
input.
state for the inputs?
Okay. So maybe username and set username.
Yeah, very nice. So remember, on every keystroke, we want to record what the user types in. So we need to create a place for some state so we can do that. Okay, 2 more steps we need to do to modify these elements now. Yeah, we need on change for both of them. And what data type does on gameplay? Nope. Whoops.
On change. So that takes a callback function.
Yeah. And what do we get for free?
So are you talking about the event?
Yep. And what do we want to do?
Yeah, so we want it to be e.target.value, so it'll target what the user is entering.
Yeah, e.target.value is the value the DOM is keeping track of, and we want that to now match what?
The set, so the setter.
Yeah, so we're going to set username as that value. And we're going to do exactly the same for password, except this is set password. Still one more thing we need to do. Anyone remember?
The value.
Yeah.
Value. So value equal to the username and value equal to the password.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, after all that work, I want to verify that this works. What can I console.log to verify that this is actually working as intended? Jazz?
Let me see. Username?
Yeah. And
password.
Yeah. So typing in here, I don't see anything because I didn't open my console. So yeah, this looks fine. We have controlled inputs. If you haven't memorized this by now, this flow, you will, because this is just the standard you have to do every time. I know we've already done it a bunch of times too, but yeah, it is a little weird. But fortunately, you have to do it so much that you will remember.
Max,
yeah.
On that form, do we need like on submit?
Yep, that's next for sure.
Oh, okay.
So you want to help us with that, David? What argument does on submit take?
It's a callback, right?
Yeah, callback function. Do you want to define it in line or?
Just make a handler, I guess.
Okay, what's a good name?
Handler. Function submit handler. Handle submit.
We can do better than that, I think. What's it actually doing?
Registering.
Yeah, so handle register, I think, is the best. And then here I'll make an async function called handle register. And what are we doing here?
Preventing the default.
Yes, we are doing that. What else are we doing here?
Is this where we're going to make the API call?
Yeah, now after all that work, we kind of get into this. So here's where we'd have to actually look at the docs. So here we have our API. I'm going to create a new folder because we're going to need to access this a bunch. I'm just going to say library. This really can be called anything like utils. And I'm going to store it here because I know I'm going to use it a bunch. And then, okay, and then here, I really could just copy this, right? What has to change, though? Something has to change here. What has to change, Hara? There's two things that have to change.
I'm not sure.
Okay, Daniel? Two things have to change here.
You have to await, I think, so you could do const request or response, sorry, and then await.
Is this a request or a response? I guess it doesn't matter. That's one thing that I wasn't even counting as the things we have to change. Something has to change within this block.
And then I think the username has to be equal to our username that we're putting up in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And so does the password.
Yep. But writing it like this, other developers will judge you, right? So what do you want to do?
We could just shorten it to username and password, I think.
Yeah. Okay, and then the normal stuff, we get back JSON that we're converting to an object. And let's console.log this for a sanity check. Okay, let's see how we do. So this is the response we're expecting. So let's register Kimberly. Password 123. I click register. And I got API is not defined. What do I need to do there, Kimberly? So it's saying this is not defined.
You have to import it.
Yep. So I imported it. I will try.
Did you export it on the other page?
I did, yeah. So let's try to register Kim again. And it looks like we got no response. Oh, maybe my server fell asleep, probably. But let's just console.log hi, see if this is even doing anything. And let's try again. Okay. So yes, render's the worst, right? It falls asleep all the time. Any questions while we're waiting for our server to wake up?
So
there we go.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but when we get that response with the token back, are we gonna also have to create a state for that token?
Yep.
Then in here.
Yeah, we'll follow the flow chart, see what the next steps are. But before we get there, we have two responses. One says success true with a token. One says success false with an error message. Failed on the field username. Why did the second one fail, do we think?
So you put it in twice?
Yeah, so we're trying to register the same user. It's not a great error message I have there, right? I should have done better, But if we have an error message, we want to show that to the client. So how can we show that to the client?
Is it error.message?
Yeah. So if we console.log info.error.message, we can see, oh, did I screw up? Is it info? Oh, info.message. No, info.error. Sorry. Oh, never mind. I gave good. I don't know why. That's weird. Anyway, I did my back-end developer duty and gave a good message for this error. But the thing is, your client's not going to have the console open. So any ideas how we can display this error in a nice way?
Are you talking about like through the front end?
Yeah, through the
Displaying
UI.
it on the front end.
An alert?
Yeah, so we could do an alert, but an alert is so ugly, right? If you actually saw this on a real website, that would be like, that'd be janky, right? So there's a nicer way we can do this. It should show up just right below here, right? Just username already exists. Please log in or whatever. So how can we get that text to just show up like right below our form?
Create a p tag.
Yeah. Create a p tag. And now we have info.error, but how do we fill that p tag with the info.error?
Just with the curly braces, just put info.error.
No, that's not going to be in scope. They're in different
okay.
scopes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
But close. We're getting close. It's pretty hard without being seen it the first time. But any guesses before I proceed? How can we selectively have text show up sometimes?
Making an if statement?
We're going to make an if, yeah. So if what?
If not info.
Info is an
Info.
object with, let's console.log info again to remind ourselves. It's an object with success property, right? Kim, 1, 2, 3. So this is info, this object with success or error. So if info.success not, that's when we have an error. I guess you could write if info.error as well, if that makes more sense to you. So what do we want to do if there's an error? How do we fill this p tag with text sometimes, and sometimes it's empty? And when we change that variable, the UI updates automatically.
You gotta create a state variable
Yeah.
to show and reveal.
There we go. So error, set error. What should it be initially, David?
I'm gonna say an empty string.
Yeah.
No?
And we actually just throw it here, so there's an error, but nothing's visible. And now when we get an error message, what do?
You set error to true.
Close, very close. If we set error to true, actually, what will we see? Which is not helpful to the client.
They're not of the same type, or
that's one thing, but also we'll just see maybe the word true, which isn't helping the client out. Actually, we don't see it.
Error.message?
It's not error.message because of the way we named our...
Info.error.
Yes. Info.error. And that's really good, like UI, I think, error notifying to the user. And really simple and gets the job done. So I'd like you to do this pattern for like all forms. And when I'm grading you, it's super helpful to me.
Quick question. Is there a way to like the input of bars, like after you put it in and successfully registered, like so a way to clear out so it doesn't say Camman 123?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this will run if we get an error, and we might as well return and shut the function down. But if we reach this line of code, we know we're good. What are the things we want to do? There's going to be a lot of things we want to do in the situation that we've like succeeded in registering. What are some of those things we want to do?
Like to let us know that we successfully made an account or whatever registered.
Yeah, well, our overall objective right now is to log in our front end user. So what are our steps to log in our front end user? And how will we do some of those things? Rodrigo, what's one step we need to do to log in our front end user?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Ketzerin, any ideas? It's also on the screen if you need a hint.
Else,
What?
do you have to put like if and else or one
No,
more
no.
if?
So right here, these are the steps to log our user in the front end. So the first one, token is stored in state. How can we do that?
Building one, declare one more state.
Yeah, creating some more state. Where should this state live? So we're in register component. Should we put the token state there? Why or why not?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
Would we put it at the very top? 'Cause
Why?
We might need to use it everywhere. Or we might need to use it in different components.
Yep. So I'm going to say token, set token. What should it be initially, Daniel?
Is it going to be an empty string?
Yeah. Okay, so now let's look at info again, right? Console.log info. What does that look like? Let's remind ourselves. So when we successfully register someone, here's what it looks like. An object with success and token. So how do I set the token state from this line of code?
Do we first have to bring it in through from the parent?
Yeah, exactly. So how can we pass our children, our router children, set token is what we need access to.
That's it.
Inside the outlet.
One more time.
Put it in the context.
Yeah. So we have the context all set up. We can just throw in set token, which is really nice. And now back to register. How do we tell the outlet context we want to use set token?
Do you pass it in?
A token and curly braces?
We usually pass it in, right? But we don't in this case. We are going to use the curly braces, but what's the React router specific function we use to grab the context?
Use outlet context.
Yeah. And then we have to import that in, and then we can grab the properties we want. And the one we want right now is set token. Finally, here, what do I do now that I have set token?
set it to local storage.
That's our next step, but we're still on step 1. Token is not stored in state yet. We're still
So
looking.
stored in state.
Yeah, how do we store it in state?
Sorry.
Set token, and what do we put as its argument?
Info dot token.
I want to verify that all that craziness actually worked. How can I verify that?
Console log token.
Yeah. Okay, so when I refresh this app, initially token is going to be equal to what? Zach, what is token initially going to be equal to?
An empty string.
An empty string, correct. But when we register, what do we hope token will then be equal to?
Whatever you're passing in, whatever you're passing in.
Not whatever I'm passing in, no.
Sorry.
What do we hope? It's going to be this token, this crazy looking string. Yeah. So there we go. So we successfully stored token in state after a user registers. But that is just step 1. That's just 1/3 of the job. The next step is token is stored in local storage. So how do I know you guys watched the video. How do I store something in my little permanent hard drive on my user's Chrome browser?
Local storage dot set item.
And here, what are the arguments that set item needs?
The token.
It does need token, so it needs a key and a value. So we're going to call the key token, and the value of actually token is what?
Token.
You might be tempted to say token, but why shouldn't you say token? This would actually be a hard error. This is a really tricky concept, but we've already run into it a few times.
Is it because is it to do with state or it changing value or something like that?
Yeah, this isn't synchronous. So we can't count on token to be token yet, which is bizarre, but unfortunately the case. So we don't want to use the state token. We want to use what?
Info.token.
Yes. The token from the response itself, because we have that immediately available. Okay. How do we test that this worked? So Zach2 presumably is being registered. How can I see if this worked? This is harder to see, right? Where can I check local storage?
Is this where you have to declare as a variable and use get item?
No, not yet. No.
Oh, okay.
I just want to verify visually in the browser.
Open application.
Yeah, so we have a new tab we've never used called application. And somewhere in here, we have local storage. And here's the little token we said to save. Right here. Which is cool that you can like visually see it. Step 2 done. Step 3 is a little harder. So, how do we get that user info? Or let me pause there. Are there questions up to this stage? We've gotten 2/3 the way of logging in our user on the front end. And the third step is the hardest by far.
Is it the get item?
What? Any questions on what we've covered so far? before we move on? Okay. So now we're on to this stage where we want to get the user information now that we have the tokens stored in state. Yeah. So any brainstorms how we could possibly do this?
Is it the local storage, but then using .get item?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to go to app.jsx and make a function called fetch user. And I'm going to go ahead into the docs and find this route and just copy this. Then I'm going to ask you guys what needs to change, if anything. So what do we think? There's definitely something that needs to change. Ronald, what do you think? What needs to change?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Is it the AJH after bear?
Yes. So this is my specific token, but hundreds of users are all going to have their own tokens. So instead of hard coding a token, how do we inject our user's specific token?
Template strings?
Yeah. And what do we inject?
Token?
Yeah. Our token stored in state. Exactly. So if there's not a token yet, what do you think I want to do to this function? We can't ask for a user if we don't have a token, right? So I'm just going to return and shut it down. And then here, this is the normal stuff. So now the question is, will this function run right now when I press save? Roman, will this function even run? This fetch user?
I think yes.
Well, no, we just defined it. We haven't invoked it anywhere. So it's not going to run.
Yeah, no.
So how can I get it to run?
You can call it. Fetch user.
Yeah, I can call it just here, but do I want it to run basically like an infinite amount of times?
No, so you have to use a use effect.
Yeah. So I want to use a use effect. And for right now, let's just think that it's going to run a single time. So right now, when I press save, all my state, what happens to my state every time I press save on this application? What happens to all my state?
You lose it?
I lose it. But what don't I lose that we learned about?
The token that's in storage.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be nice if I grabbed that token? How can I go ahead and grab that token?
localStorage.get.
Yeah. Get item. And this, we only need one argument. What is it? The name of our key that we created. And now, if there is a local token, I want to go ahead and set my state token to the local token. So now, how many times is this going to run now? Let's console.log local token maybe. Any guesses for how many times this is going to run? Anyone say one time? It's really one or more than one. I think one, except for because we're in a development environment, maybe more, but let's go ahead and see. So it ran twice because of the whole development environment. So we're console.logging local token. That's great. But is token going to be defined? So token is undefined both times. So we kind of want fetch user to rerun after it sets the token. So how can I tell this use effect to rerun when the token changes?
Add it as a dependency.
Yeah. So now we have some errors. API is not defined. We can fix that one by importing it. And now, okay, so we did this response successfully, and we got a response success true and the user information. So if our success here is true, and this is exciting, we're now almost done with logging in, or we will be done when we do this, because our final step is what? Yeah, David?
That we have to set the states, or?
Yeah, user info stored in state. What does that mean?
For our app, the username and the password.
Yeah, so what do we have to do first?
I mean, is it just set name?
Yeah, but we don't have a set name yet.
So we create it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to create user and set user. And here's a little different an answer. What should be our default argument for this?
Null.
It could be. I like doing an empty object so it matches its eventual data type, because eventually user is going to be an object. But there's some flexibility there. Now, if info.success is true, and this is what info looks like, how do we want to update our state of user with the info we want?
Set user?
Yeah, set user to what?
Info.user?
Yes. Set user, info.user. Now, after all that hard work, how do we verify that actually all of this worked? What can we console.log?
User?
Yeah, we can just console.log user. And there we go. It ended up running now 6 times, but we have Zach and his ID. So we're done with authentication on the front end, which is really cool. I mean, this is a lot of work, but after doing it 3 times, it feels intuitive. Yeah, so any questions? That's a good stopping place, right? Any questions on all of that?
Yeah, Max, on line 25, where you have the token variable there, why is it okay to use it there? Because I thought token was in state and that it was asynchronous, and we didn't know what token would be at any point in time.
Yeah, because eventually when token is done changing its value successfully, we're asking fetch user to run again. So it's guaranteed that at some point, on some iteration, token is going to exist. That's the whole point of use effect, actually. Use effect's whole point is when this state changes for real, run something else. So it's guaranteed. But the first few times this runs, token will be undefined. Even if it hits this, it still will probably be undefined right here. I mean, I don't know for sure. No one does, but yeah.
What are lines 20 and 21 supposed to do?
Oh, this is really just there's no point in sending a request if token's undefined. We'll just get an error from the server, which is fine. We probably don't need this and it would still work fine. It's just why send the server a request if we know we don't have a token.
Okay.
But that's just like a little extra.
So line 17 to 19 is checking first to see if a local token already exists. And if not, we are creating one.
Yeah, so this is like if you go to Amazon, you don't have to re-log in because a local token exists in local storage and you don't have to retype your username and password. That's this feature. So the user can press refresh on the browser and it'll just send the request with the local token. And it'll set your state token to match the local token.
So I do have a question. Something I'm kind of confused about. The process we just did was to register a user or to log in a user. Just because
we didn't touch login today, we just did register.
So this is just storing a user in your. I'm assuming it's going to be storing. Is it going to be storing it somewhere in the back end? Like.
In the database, it is going to be storing it. But today wasn't really about that. That's going to be when we do this from the back end. Today is about how to do authentication from the front end. So what we did is register. We got a token. We stored that token for future use, basically. And now until the user reformats their computer, clears their browser, you can stay logged in as long as you want your user to be logged in for. Because you can set these tokens to expire, but that's a whole nother topic.
Are we applying this to our gallery?
No, that's a great question. I was going to say that too. This is all for tomorrow's work. So today's work, the gallery is way simpler. You're just doing like a dummy user and you don't have to do any of these real requests. But on Wednesday, you're going to start doing this for real. But today will be, I think, a good transition because it's going to be, you're going to get a taste, but it's not going to be anything like this yet. So no request to the server. Your login will just be like on click, set user to be that dummy user again. That's what today's job will be. Yeah. That's all login will do for today. Like on click. Set the user. All right. I'll get breakout rooms going.